Okay, this is part 4 of my little American history rant here, if you will. Um, and I actually pulled up the Constitution because I really just want to kind of go through this very, very quickly. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Something I want to touch on here. Secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. That word posterity there is a very important word, and it basically it means future generations. See, the framers were not fighting for liberty necessarily for themselves. And in fact, I looked this word posterity up, and I'm just going to give you what it says here: all future generations of people. See, and so so the Constitution is not an out of date piece of paper. It is a rule of law that was written for us, just as it was written for the people who lived 200 and some plus years ago. And I'm not going to do the math in my head, but this document is just as valid today as it was the day it was written. I've said that before, and it is our rule of law, ladies and gentlemen. See, we are looking for our government to make changes in our lives, or in the way that they rule, so that we could have our freedom back. And what we don't understand is that in reality, everything has already been written for us to regain those rights, and we see that in the Declaration of Independence, actually, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, what ends? Rights. The rights that are granted by God. So that when governments destroy those rights, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principle and organizing its powers in such form as to them, the people, shall seem most likely to affect the people's security and safety and happiness. And so we go back to the Constitution, which, by the way, doesn't grant rights. God grants rights. The Constitution simply lists what some of those rights are, and in particular the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, redress and petition, bearing arms, being a well-regulated militia. By the way, and the purpose of that is to secure a free state. And really, when I think about that idea of a free state, it is a state of freedom. See, the right to bear arms isn't so we can protect ourselves from thugs and thieves and whatnot, and it does provide that for us. But in the day that this was written, it was more about being able to fight off a tyrannical government. That's the context of this, because look at what was going on at the time that this was written. And this is why worldwide people are really watching what Americans are doing, when it comes to especially gun control, because the people around the world, and it blows me away to this day that the Australian people and the Canadian people have given up their gun ownership rights. I don't get it. And now these people are actually looking at us and they're wondering, is the largest army in the world the American people, because we are the largest army in the world. I've used this number before. 85 million people in America by hunting license. And think about all the people who don't hunt and still have weapons in their homes. It's been estimated that some 180 to 200 million households in America have at least one firearm. And so we stand as a large force to be reckoned with. And no wonder that the government wants to see. Right now there is no such thing as gun registration. Guns are not registered with the government. A lot of people think that they are. That's not true. Your background check is just simply to determine whether or not you've committed a felony, or if you're on the no-fly list, which is a bunch of crap. I'm not going to go there. But at the end of the day, the paperwork that is filed when you purchase a gun stays with the seller of the gun, and that paperwork. In fact, I know some FFL dealers privately, and they've all told me that if the government ever comes for their paperwork, that they're going to have a fire, so that the government will never know who has bought what. And quite frankly, according to the Constitution, it's none of their business. See, it's funny how the government decides what is and is not their business, when really the Constitution has already decided that for them. We have a right to be secure in our persons, property, paper. Well, doesn't guns fit into that? It sure does. So we see these things, and involved in that is unreasonable search and seizure. They have to have probable cause and what? A search warrant. And in order to get a search warrant, they have to have probable cause. It has to be signed by a judge. But I really want to get down to the nitty-gritty of this whole thing. When the founders and the settlers of this nation realized that when they declared independence, that war was going to be declared upon them by Great Britain. They knew it. They knew it well in advance, that when they said, "We're not following you anymore," that they were going to have to fight with the latest weapons of the day, by the way. They had the same weapons as Britain did, including cannons, cannonballs, and muskets. Muskets were the gun of the day. And so for people to say, well, the normal people of today shouldn't have the same weaponry as the government, really? Why not? That's my question. Why shouldn't we? Since the purpose of being armed is to keep the people from being infringed upon by a government, how do we do that if the government outarms the people? How do we do that? And so not only do we have the right to bear small arms and long arms and bows and arrows, but to be quite frank with you, it's every right of ours to own whatever we can afford to own. If you can afford to own a tank, then you should buy. If you can afford to own an F-16 and be able to arm it in order to fight against a tyrannical government, then we should be able to do that. Guys, this is what this is about. You know, when I was in the military, and anyone who's been in the military, we know our oath. It is to protect and defend the Constitution against enemies, foreign and domestic. And the thing is the domestic enemy is our own government now. People say, "Oh, you're anti-government." No, I am anti-government that infringes upon the rights of the people. As a matter of fact, in the Florida Constitution, it states very clearly that the political power lies within the people. The people are the government. We are the government. We are a republic, not a democracy. The people are supposed to rule as sovereign individuals. And unless you commit an actual crime, which consists of harm, damage, loss, and a victim, the government has no right whatsoever to intrude on anything in your life. Nothing. They can't tell you what you can and cannot do with your property. Listen, if you want to live in a cardboard house, that is your business. And it's none of the government's business. And the point is this, ladies and gentlemen. We have every right. We've suffered long enough to do what is necessary to regain and retake our certain unalienable rights, up to and including an armed revolution. And I know that's very difficult for some people to accept. But what did the founders of this nation do? And we do that first by saying we no longer are going to abide by your rules and regulations and laws that infringe upon God-given rights. But see, until we as a nation gather together in our own communities, county by county, township by township, city by city, and we gather before the people who are supposed to be there as elected officials to defend our constitutional God-given rights and tell them no more, we will continue to suffer these abuses by the very people we put into office. Ladies and gentlemen, we do this one county, one town, one city at a time. But we do it collectively and united as a nation until we stand up to these people. We'll continue to be their slaves. You can contact me at ronrackforfreedom@gmail.com. And guys, we can get together and we can start planning this out. Listen, if you're not willing to die and fight for freedom, then what are you doing here? If liberty and freedom are not that sweet to you that you're willing to give up your life, and not just for our sakes, but the sake of our children and our children's children, what kind of legacy are you leaving behind? Listen, no one wants to die, but of course we all will one day. And I would rather die for something than to die for nothing. God bless America, and God help us as we go forward